So now with the preseason over and the regular season being upon us, why don't I share my predictions for the Eastern Conference standings this year? If I don't have your favorite team in the top 8 making the playoffs, please don't be offended. This is nothing against that team personally. I'm just telling you guys what I flat out think who is and who isn't going to make the playoffs this year and where exactly I think these teams will finish. Alright, so at number 1 in the Eastern Conference, you probably could guess this one. Yes, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning taking home first in the East, first in the Atlantic, obviously. 108 points I have them finishing with. Tampa, even though they've lost some good players over this offseason, I still think they're a very strong team and a team that can still do some damage in the playoffs as well. At second, I have the Florida Panthers finishing with 105 points. Well, Florida has been an underachieving squad up until last year where they finally realized their potential before bowing out to a very strong Tampa Bay team in round 1. I think the Panthers, they are a team that can finally take the next step, win a playoff series, hopefully for their sakes especially. It's about time South Florida sees a playoff win finally. And they have a great nucleus there. Obviously, we know Alexander Barkov just re-upped with them for another 8 years, so he has faith in the team as well, and that's good to see. That's a great sign for the Florida Panthers. And with having Joel Quenneville there as their head coach, I think they're in great hands. At number 3, I have the Carolina Hurricanes finishing with 103 points. I think a lot of people north of the border are going to resent me for having 3 Deep South teams finishing top 3 in the East. For Carolina, they lose Dougie Hamilton in the offseason, but I still think they are a very strong team. They have a great group of guys on the back end. They brought in the ever so controversial Anthony DeAngelo, but all his controversies aside, you can't deny that this guy does have a great skill set, especially when his head's in the game. At number 4, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs finishing with 102 points, and while a lot of people have said the Leafs are going to be a wild card team at best this year, I highly disagree with that prediction. I think they're going to be a very good team. I don't think they're going to be ahead of the Panthers or the Lightning, but I think they're going to be right in the mix. And you're probably thinking, well, Uthio, why are expectations so high for the Leafs? All they do is bow out in the first round every year. Well, as long as you have Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and John Tavares on your team, along with a good supporting cast, which I believe the Leafs have put around those 4 guys for this season, expectations are going to be high for them as long as that's the case. At number 5, I have the New York Islanders finishing with 101 points. Yes, I am no longer going to be that idiot, that fool that doubts the New York Islanders because all they've done is prove us wrong the last few years. Zdeno Chara and Zach Parise, and they also re-signed Kyle Palmieri, which I thought was really good for them. And even though Chara and Parise are near the end of their careers, I think if they're put in the right positions to succeed, they could still be very effective. At 6th in the Eastern Conference, I have the Washington Capitals finishing with 99 points. Washington, they're looked at as a team that's on the downturn. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run at the Stanley Cup this year. That's how good I still think they are. And that's how much respect I still have for them, despite putting them at 6th in the Eastern Conference. 7th in the Eastern Conference, I have the Boston Bruins, a team that's also looked at, much like the Washington Capitals, that's past their prime. I have them finishing with 97 points. Boston did some good things in the offseason. They brought in Eric Holla, most notably Nick Foligno as well. But I don't think they're going to be a powerhouse for at least the foreseeable future anyways, at least not this season. But I think they still will be a playoff team and a pretty good one. Right at number 8 in the Eastern Conference, as we all know, this is it. This is the final spot for the playoffs. It's the New York Rangers. I have them taking home the final spot, and I have them getting in with 95 points. My season preview for the New York Rangers, I did pick them to make the playoffs, as those of you who watched that video will remember. I just think their young players will take enough of a step forward. You couple that with the fact that they got Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, and Mika Zibanejad. I think they're going to be a very good team. Not like a powerhouse this year, but I think this is going to be the start of a pretty good stretch of years for the New York Rangers. And obviously it sounds like Mika Zibanejad is going to sign an 8-year contract extension with New York, so good for him. I mean, as a Sens fan, I kind of selfishly wanted him back, signing in the offseason as an unrestricted free agent to come back to Ottawa. But good for the Rangers and good for their fans that they get to keep him around for another 8 years, it sounds like. Talk about bold predictions. At number 9, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins missing the playoffs for the first time since 2006, and I have them getting 93 points. Yes, Sid and Gino will not be able to overcome Father Time this year. I don't think Pittsburgh has a good enough team to overcome some of those teams that I mentioned in the playoffs this year. And for that reason, that's why I have them missing. Don't get me wrong, Pittsburgh's still a very competitive team, but I just don't know if I can justify putting them ahead of any of the 8 teams that I've already mentioned. At number 10, I have the Philadelphia Flyers finishing with 90 points. In Philly, they have some good players, Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier. They brought in Cam Atkinson. They brought in Ristolainen. I like what the Flyers have done on their back end. They brought in Ryan Ellis as well. And it was really tough for me to put them out of the playoffs, but much like Pittsburgh, I don't know if I can justify putting them ahead of any of those 8 teams. At number 11, I have my favorite team, the Ottawa Senators, finishing with 87 points. Much like I said in my season preview for them, I think they'll be right in the mix right till the very end, but I can't see them making the playoffs this year. But the future is definitely bright for the Sens. They have a lot of great young players, as we all know, but because they are very young and inexperienced, and now especially that they are dealing with some injuries, I don't really know if they're going to make the playoffs. Even if they weren't dealing with injuries, though, I don't think they're good enough quite yet to overcome those teams that I mentioned in the playoffs. Finishing 12th, I have the Montreal Canadiens with 84 points. And Montreal's a funny team for me because they have a lot of good players, but I'm not sold on their coaching. Dom Ducharme, some of the systems he employs, I'm not sold on, like I did mention in my season preview for the Habs. They're back on their heels a lot. They rely on their goaltending too much. Obviously, we know the situation with Carey Price, and by the way, I'm wishing him all the best with that going forward. But with that situation, if Price can't come back, then Montreal could really be in trouble. Even if Price was there for the full season, I don't really know that I can put Montreal in the playoffs this year. 13th, I have New Jersey finishing with 82 points. The Devils have done a lot of good things this offseason, but I don't know if I can put them higher than that. I still think there are a lot of teams ahead of them, but New Jersey is definitely trending in the right direction. Another team I have finishing pretty low in the standings, but that is also going in the right direction, is the Detroit Red Wings. I have them finishing 14th with 79 points. And Detroit, I think they'll be a much better team, a much harder team to play against than the last few seasons. But much like New Jersey, I think they are going in the right direction. 15th, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets with 72 points. I think it is a bit of a retool/rebuild mode. I don't know, maybe they might surprise me. I could see them being a team that does surprise me, if anything, and not make the playoffs, but finish higher than what I have them projected to finish. But I do think they have some good prospects. They made a good trade with Seth Jones there, sending him to Chicago. I thought they got a good return. They did pretty well for themselves there. I see Columbus finishing much higher than that. I can't justify putting them ahead of the teams that I've mentioned. 16th in the Eastern Conference, you guessed it, I have the Buffalo Sabres finishing last with 63 points. For Buffalo, yes, it's going to be another year out of the playoffs. I think that's very unfortunate for them, obviously. But they are kind of going through another rebuild, I guess you would have to say. Now they're kind of rebuilding the rebuild, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And Buffalo, they got to do what's best for their franchise, and this has to be a tank year for them, you would have to think. So there it is, my Eastern Conference predictions. Please let me know what you all think in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear your Eastern Conference predictions too. If you could do that for me in the comments as well, that would be great. But please let me know all that and more. Also, like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.